Hey everyone, DJ here. Welcome back to the series. Before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that sometimes if I have multiple character suggestions or I simply can't decide which character to cover, I put out a poll and let you guys decide. So if you want to see a certain character, definitely check out those polls and vote. On the subject of those polls, however, the most recent one had 4 characters: Gina, Ashima, Lexi, and the most voted one by far, Etienne, the French electric locomotive, and subject of today's video. So without further ado, let's get into it. Etienne, or Stephen in English, was first introduced in the 2016 Thomas & Friends film The Great Race. He is described by the wiki and his Meet the Contenders short as being kind and gentlemanly, coming to the Great Race with the hope of making friends and having fun. He is also canonically the fastest engine in the world in Thomas & Friends, proven by his Great Railway Show performance, top speed, and basis. He was first seen at Brendam Docks along with the other Great Railway Show contenders when their ship en route to the mainland for the Great Railway Show docked there accidentally, to which he and the others moved back onto the ship and made their way to the mainland proper. He was later seen at the Great Railway Show competing in the Great Race alongside the likes of Spencer, Axel, Flying Scotsman, and Shooting Star, formerly known as Gordon. Shooting Star did take the lead, however he was forced to forfeit after his boiler exploded due to a missing safety valve. This led to Spencer taking the lead and almost winning, however Etienne overtook Spencer at the last minute, thus securing his victory in the Great Race for France. Etienne later appeared in the 2017 Great Race Friends Near and Far short, Axel Goes to the Mountains, where he and Axel travel through France, and Axel becomes tired of Etienne's boasting of being a fast and quiet electric locomotive. At a station, however, they are asked to take some stranded passengers home to a station in the mountains, and without electric cables above those lines, however, Etienne cannot make the run, so Axel does it alone, initially happy about the peace and quiet without Etienne's boasting, however soon feeling lonely and sympathetic to the left-behind Etienne, thus finishing his run and returning to push Etienne through the mountain line so Etienne can see it regardless of rails. Etienne then appeared in another Great Race Friends Near and Far short in 2017, that being Etienne Visits London, where Etienne, in England on the way to catch his ferry to France, tries to see Big Ben and the other sights of London, and although unable to see Big Ben, finds joy in seeing some other sights up close later on. For some reason, these were not released in chronological order, but whatever. These are both really fun shorts, especially Etienne Visits London. If you haven't seen them, I highly recommend you check them out. And after that, Etienne, drumroll please, never appeared again. Not in the Big World Big Adventures movie or show, which, as I've discussed before, is really cruddy considering the piles of potential that show had. I'll get to all of that and some more things about Etienne later, but for right now, I would like to talk about his basis. Okay, apologies for any French words I mispronounce. Thank you all for your patience. Etienne is based on the Société Nationale des Chemins de Fer Français BB 9004, a direct current electric locomotive built in 1954. Designed by Jeannot Schneider for the SNCF, 9004 had a sibling, 9003, who was built slightly before it in 1952, with both of them designed alongside SNCF BB 9001 and 9002. Both locomotives had a bow wheel configuration, twin pantographs, and were powered by 1.5 kilovolt DC overhead wires. 9004 and 9003 did have some mechanical differences, however. 9003 had 4 Swiss-built Oerlikon 6F330 traction motors, whereas 9004 had 4 French Jeannot Schneider SW4326 traction motors. 9003 was also the lighter of the two and a bit more powerful, weighing in at 88.18 tons and having a power output of 4,260 horsepower, whereas 9004 weighed 91.49 tons and had a power output of 4,000 horsepower. 9004, however, is definitely the more interesting of the two overall, performatively speaking, as on the 29th of March, 1955, it set a rail speed record of 331 kilometers per hour, or 206 miles per hour, on the Landis line stretching between Fracture and Morsanx, France. This record was also awarded to SNCF 7107, who the day prior failed to top over 325 kilometers per hour or 202 miles per hour, but was given the title anyway so as to protect the interests of both locomotives manufacturers. The rail speed record event was heavily broadcasted, and quite fascinatingly, an American TV crew sent a plane to try and fly over the train, convinced it would derail before it reached record speed. They themselves instead found it hard to keep up. Quite humorous if I do say so myself. Outside of record-breaking though, in regular service, both 9003 and 9004 were decently fast too, having an operational top speed of 140 kilometers per hour or 87 miles per hour. The locomotives ran in revenue-earning service until January 24, 1973, when they were withdrawn and moved to storage in Hausbergen, and here's where things get interesting. In 1979, 9003 was sent to the Arles workshops for restoration, but both 9003 and 9004 were in rough condition. So the body of 9003 was fitted onto the frame, running gear, and internal components of 9004, with 9004's number plates being put on the body, making the locomotive a Frankenstein hodgepodge of the two. The new 9004 was donated to Site du Train in Mulhouse in 1981, was displayed as a part of the Champs Elysees in Paris as a part of an exhibition in 2003, and in 2005 was ran one final time on the Landis line along the same stretch it broke the rail speed record in order to mark the 50th anniversary, which means that by the time this video releases, it will already be 70 years. Just wow. All this history, however, suggests some rather unfortunate implications about Etienne, as his Meet the Contenders short confirmed that he is supposed to be 9004, and that means a couple of different scenarios regarding who Etienne is supposed to be and how. Scenario 1 is that the Great Race takes place before 1973, when Etienne was withdrawn, and therefore he is the original 9004, then having his body shell discarded and his chassis used in the remade new 9004, meaning he basically got scrapped. Scenario 2 is that the Great Race takes place after 1979, and Etienne was at one point 9003, having his shell put on his sibling, the original 9004's body, and becoming the new 9004. And scenario 3 is that Etienne is a completely new engine that was created when 9003 and 9004 were combined to make the new 9004. I'm honestly not sure which scenario I hate the least, and they are all rather disturbing, and it's probably way too much thought to put into a Thomas the Tank Engine character, but whatever. If anyone has any good headcanons for Etienne, let me know. At least he does live on in some capacity in the form of the preserved new 9004. Okay, so I don't really have much to say about Etienne in the way of fixing his character or anything, just one obvious problem and a few nitpicks. So, to get the obvious one out of the way, Big World Big Adventures shouldn't have forgotten him, and his Great Race Friends Near and Far shorts should have just been episodes in Big World Big Adventures. I also think an episode with him and another electric engine like Stafford or Kenji would be neat. I do actually have one problem with the Axel Goes to the Mountains short, and that's that Etienne's personality is kind of inconsistent. He's shown as being boastful and vain after winning the Great Race, after being characterized by his Meet the Contenders short as someone who wasn't even in the Great Race to win, just to make friends. Not saying he can't change, it's just that it kind of felt out of nowhere. One more issue I had, but I will admit this one is a nitpick, is that the show is inconsistent as to where Etienne can go with his power source. As he comes off the ship at Brendam, where there aren't any overhead power cables, and that implies he has a backup battery like Kenji, and there aren't any overhead cables at the main Great Railway Show yard, so that reinforces that implication, but in the Axel Goes to the Mountains short, Etienne can't traverse the mountain line because the line has no overhead cables. So, which is it? Can he move on his own without power cables, or not? Very much a nitpick though, and I have no other issues, big or small, with Etienne. Okay, so for this installment of Collection Corner, we are looking at Etienne's 2019 Thomas Wood model, and I have to say, it's pretty middle of the road. I know it's thanks to the Wood redesign, but him having an 060 wheelbase and not an accurate Bobo one makes him look so squashed and kind of dumb looking. I do appreciate his pantographs being present and his livery looking really solid and accurate. It's not the worst Wood model, and if released in Trackmaster Push-Along, which was the die-cast equivalent at the time, I don't think it would have been much better. I do, for the record, feel that his Trackmaster motorized model was better compared to the Wood one. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. In conclusion, Etienne is definitely, in terms of his basis at least, the most interesting electric engine in Thomas & Friends, and a character that, say it with me folks, should have appeared again. The Great Race champion, and for a time the world's fastest engine, Etienne would have sent sparks of great storytelling into any episode he could have been put in. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any suggestions for future characters, let me know in the comments. And as I said in the beginning, if I can't decide, the most suggested characters will be put into a poll for you all to vote on. See you all in the next one. Bye, guys!